Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Nestled in the easternmost panhandle of the state, the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's also where the confluence of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers meet. This is Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, a small, quiet little town. But 150 years ago, what happened here changed the course of U.S. history.
They reached Harpers Ferry and they circled round. Great God Almighty, so John Brown.
October 16, 2009 marks the Sesquicentennial anniversary of John Brown's raid on Harpers Ferry. The entire region, along with the National Park Service, are staging several events to commemorate the anniversary.
Well, Kansas is really where the Civil War begins in terms of bloodshed, real bloodshed. Kansas became emblematic of atrocity on both the pro-slavery and the anti-slavery side, and Brown was involved in those kinds of atrocities. The most famous massacre that Brown himself was engaged in occurred at a place called Pottawatomie Creek. It got very violent out there. It was very bloody. It was very atrocious. There was killing that was extreme. Once Kansas had its election and determined which way it would go, slave or non-slave, and it did go non-slave, Brown came back east. His mission there was pretty well completed. He knew that he needed to do something that would give him the weapons he needed to commence his real war against slavery. And so finally Brown looked at the map. He discovered Harpers Ferry in Virginia, the largest slaveholding state in the South.
Harpers Ferry was also where the U.S. military had one of its largest arsenal of weapons made and stored there.
That building is historic. There's very few things that we replaced as we went along.
Captain South T. Lynn is a local historian and owner of the Kennedy Farm.
A local suggested the Kennedy Farm, which was vacant and could be had cheap because old man Kennedy had died in April.
In the summer of 1859, John Brown, his wife and family, plus 21 other men, leased the Kennedy Farm in Washington County, Maryland, just 6 miles from Harpers Ferry.
And Brown, of course, came along in July. And they went out here, stood on the porch, looked around, and thought it was an ideal place for what they wanted to do. That is, stage a raid on Harpers Ferry.
John Brown tried to recruit Frederick Douglass. Douglass had known of John Brown's plans for more than 10 years.
When Douglass met with Brown, Douglass did not want to go with Brown, and Douglass did not participate in the raid.
He met with Douglass just a few weeks before Brown entered Harpers Ferry and was pleading with him to join him. He said, "When the bees begin to swarm, I want you to help me hive them." And Douglass said, "No, you're going into a perfect steel trap, and once in, you will never get out alive."
Right after the raid, Frederick Douglass left the country or moved away. He didn't want to be associated with it because they just knew that he was tied into it somewhere.
John Brown and his men marched toward Harpers Ferry in what some of them called a funeral procession. They cut the telegraph lines on the Maryland side of the river at 10:30 at night on Sunday, October 16th, came across the bridge and into town, and John Brown's raid began.
Ironically, the first person killed in the raid on Harpers Ferry was a free black man, a railroad night watchman named Hayward Shepard.
Shepard took 2 more steps toward the bridge. "Halt!" was yelled a second time. Shepard turned to walk away, and then bang! A shot was fired, and it hit Shepard in the back, mortally wounding him. After Brown's men came off the B&O Railroad Bridge, they went through downtown Harpers Ferry and straight to the front gate of the United States Armory. There they encountered another night watchman who they took hostage. They broke the chain and worked their way into the armory and made the fire engine house, the building just behind me, their headquarters. And it's the only building still standing from the United States Armory and Arsenal.
John Brown's raid on Harpers Ferry lasted only 36 hours. Brevet Colonel Robert E. Lee, then of the U.S. Army, and Lieutenant Jeb Stewart captured Brown on October 17, 1859, with the help of the U.S. Marines. Inside the small firehouse, John Brown was wounded, and 11 hostages were freed.
I think there's no question that John Brown commences the Civil War as we know it. Brown fired the first shots of that war here at Harpers Ferry.
The war started 16 months after Brown was hanged, and his last written words, the day of his execution, 2 sentences. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood.
Mr. Brown, he just hated slavery and he was going to get rid of it, and he did.
Today, we have Obama in the White House. He probably wouldn't have been in the White House if it wasn't for one blow that John Brown struck. So it actually trickled on down.
Tyrone Couch, NBC News, Harpers Ferry, West Virginia.